Beauty and horror. These two concepts seem like they should be at odds, yet it's surprisingly common for them to work in unison. Sometimes a dash of beauty can make a character all the more unsettling, and a dash of horror can make a character all the more alluring. That's why it should come as no surprise that Mileena from Mortal Kombat has garnered some, let's say, strong reactions.
Jackpot!
And hey, I'm right there with ya. I don't even play Mortal Kombat, but I love Mileena. When she debuted in MK2, the fact that Mileena had big freaky monster teeth was a surprise that you only found out about if you did a certain fatality or finished arcade mode with her. But now it's an integral part of her character, which makes for some really interesting designs. Of course, some are better than others, which is where I come in. Good morrow everyone, Silvershire here, and welcome to the revamped version of Palette Swap, where I'm going to discuss all 27 Mileena costumes and then rank them from worst to best. But first, who is Mileena? When the evil warlord Shao Kahn, conquered the realm of Edenia, he kidnapped its young princess, Katana, and raised her as an assassin. However, he feared that she would one day betray him, so he commissioned the sorcerer Shang Tsung to create a clone of Katana who would be entirely loyal to the Khan. While he was at it, Shang threw in some DNA from the ferocious Tarkatan species, making the clone even deadlier than Katana. Thus, Mileena was born. She and her sister worked together for a time, but as Shao predicted, Katana eventually turned against him, sparking a long-standing and bitter rivalry with Mileena. Between her resemblance to Katana and uncanny ability to mimic her voice,
now do you believe Cabal?
How in the hell is that possible?
Mileena was able to impersonate her sister to destroy Shao Kahn's enemies from within, or just use her teeth inside to destroy them from without. Mileena's lore changed drastically in the rebooted timeline from MK1, but I'll talk more about that when we get there. I won't spend too much time on Mileena's first couple of costumes, because they're literally just magenta versions of Katana's, which I've already discussed. The cliff notes are that her MK2 design is simple but effective, and her MK3 design adds some nice detail but lacks a cohesive vision. Magenta is a more attention-grabbing color than dark blue, which makes it fitting for Mileena since she doesn't seem to care much about stealth. We only get a few glimpses of her face in the early games, and I don't think they pulled it off very well. The upper half of her face doesn't resemble Katana's in the slightest, which defeats the purpose of the mask. MK4 starts to differentiate the sisters more. While Katana looks the same as she did in MK3, Mileena gets a new design with a ponytail and a slightly different outfit. It's nice that she's more than a palette swap now, but this is just different for the sake of being different. None of these changes say anything about Mileena. Her eyes are all white now, which looks cool but is a bit of an overplayed trope in Mortal Kombat. Plus, Tarkatans don't have white eyes, so I don't know why Mileena would. Now, here's where I would show a picture of Mileena's face from MK4. If I had one! For some baffling reason, she never takes her mask off in this game, so we can't see her big freaky monster teeth. Not in any artwork, not in any cutscenes, not even when she spits a bunch of nails out for her fatality. That alone makes this one of the worst versions of Mileena. MK Deception is a departure from the classic ninja design. She looks more like a dancer, with lots of loose, flowing fabric that gives her a distinct silhouette. Though I personally prefer the ninja style, I appreciate that this distinguishes the sisters in a more meaningful way. Katana looks like a stealthy assassin, while Mileena plays up the femme fatale angle. On that note, I criticize some of Katana's skimpier costumes for seeming out of character, but I think this kind of design works better for Mileena since it's in keeping with her flirtatious personality. Either that or I'm just biased because I like Mileena more. Her color palette is mostly black this time around, which strengthens the villainous vibe, though I don't think pink accents look as good as her traditional magenta. Thankfully, the Player 2 color fixes that. Instead of a mask, she's wearing a translucent veil, letting you see her big freaky monster teeth. I don't know why she would want to do that, but I like that it makes her Tarkatan features a more prominent part of the design. Speaking of which, her eyes are back to normal, but as she takes damage, they transform into yellow Tarkatan eyes. That's a super neat detail that I'd like to return in the future. Her alternate costume brings back a few elements of her classic design, like the headband, and it lets her hair down. She has the exact same veil as her default, which was a missed opportunity to shake things up a bit, either by bringing back her classic mask or by doing something new. Strangely, the colors of her official render don't match the in-game model. In the render, her top is black with a pink outline, but on her model, it's the other way around. I think the in-game version is better since it matches her boots. In Shaolin Monks, she's wearing an outfit similar to her default from Deception, albeit a lot simpler. I like the straps around her arms and legs, but other than that, it's just too plain, especially in comparison to Jade, whom she usually fights alongside in this game. Her MK9 design is basically a better version of her Deception ult. There's a cool mouth motif on her mask and the top of her boots, and she has some fishnets on her legs for additional texture. This costume highlights something I appreciate about MK9, which is that it actually lets the women have some muscle definition. Bamco could never. Unfortunately, her face bears less resemblance to Katana's than ever before.
She looks like me.
Girl, you might need to get your eyes checked. Her alternate costume is reminiscent both of her Deception design and of Katana's alternate costume from this game. It maintains the mouth motif, and as much as I like that design, I would have preferred something more unique. The asymmetry is cool though, it gives her a chaotic look that suits Mileena. Lastly for this game is her Flesh Pits costume, which I don't think I can show in its entirety on YouTube. As I said earlier, I don't mind some fanservice for Mileena, but this is the laziest fanservice possible. And worse, it's fanservice at the cost of everything else. Like, at least Ivy from Soulcalibur has gloves and boots and jewelry. This is just bandages. I would have preferred if they took this design in more of an Egyptian mummy direction. I know that wouldn't make sense given the lore of the Flesh Pits, but this costume already doesn't make sense. Why did Shang Tsung give his genetic abomination makeup and nail polish? Better yet, why did he give her bandages?
I can excuse
Torture and mutilation?
but I draw the line at
Indecent exposure. And, to add insult to injury, the way to unlock this costume was to beat all 300 levels of the Challenge Tower. The devs put in minimum effort and then required maximum effort from players to acquire it. Her MKX design is a mixed bag. Aside from the lack of color that plagues this entire game, I think it's one of her best outfits. The leathery material and angular shape language make her look tough and dangerous. She also has a horned skull on her belt, finally giving her a visual connection to Shao Kahn. The problem is that her face is way less monstrous than usual. I actually like the normal human nose, because it makes her look more like Katana, but the normal human lips are a step too far. Worse, in order to accommodate the normal human lips, they made her big freaky monster teeth less big and less freaky. The ones in front are barely even pointy anymore. The horror of Mileena's design was downplayed for the sake of beauty, and as a result, she looks more generic. Plus, there's no lore explanation for why she suddenly has lips, and I'm pretty sure the real reason is that someone in the writer's room just really liked the idea of her making out with Devora.
That is a ladybug.
It's a real shame this costume didn't come back in MK11 or MK1, because I'd like to see it with an updated art style and more monstrous face. Unlike most of MKX's tournament skins, Mileena's isn't a reimagining of her MK9 design. It goes for a more armored look, and much like her default, it's a bit ragged. You can see a bunch of stitched together gashes on her pants, for instance. I like the choice to incorporate some asymmetry into the design, but I think they could have taken it further. Maybe those metal demon faces on her arms and legs could have been mismatched, like she's just scavenging for armor and throwing together whatever she can find. Kanam is mainly just a palette swap of her tournament costume, replacing the dull lavender and brown palette with a more striking combination of black and magenta, along with some bright gold armor. This still isn't the most colorful design, but in MKX I'll take what I can get. The only part of her character model that changes is the head. She has a different mask, her hair is pulled into a ponytail, and she has a fancy gold headpiece, all of which grant her an air of regality. Lastly for this game is her Vampiress costume. Vampire Mileena sounds like a match made in heaven, but I think it's just okay. The designers didn't do a whole lot with the concept. Like, yeah, she's pale and has some bat-shaped armor, but surely this was a chance to go all out on a gothic fantasy aesthetic. As is, it kind of just looks like she raided Scarlet's wardrobe. On a positive note, I actually like the human lips in the context of a vampire. That brings us to MK11. I'm going to start with her face this time around, because I think this is the best iteration of it. She keeps the human nose from MKX, but not the lips. Instead, there's a reddish section around her mouth that makes the transition to her teeth seem more natural. She also has a long tongue with a rough texture like that of a cat, which I think is an excellent addition. Her outfit reminds me of her tournament and Kanam costumes, but with less armor. The metal claws on her fingertips are neat. I guess Anna from Tekken 8 copied her homework. If I were to nitpick, this color palette is a bit too purple for my liking. She has an alternate pink option, but that one goes too far in the other direction. Neither of these hit that magenta sweet spot. But overall, it's a great design. I can't believe there are people who hate on Mileena. Look at this face and tell me that's not the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. Clone Warrior brings back more of the ninja aesthetic, combining form-fitting attire with some Japanese-style armor. She looks a lot like her sister in this costume, which I assume was intentional given the name. In fact, her hairstyle and headband are taken straight from Katana's default. This is a simple but effective design that reminds me of old-school Mileena. True Kanam takes inspiration from Shao Kahn, complete with a variation of his iconic skull kabuto. I love all the asymmetrical armor. It truly makes her look like a fearsome warlord. My only problem with this design is that it obscures so much of her face, especially if you choose to equip a mask. Beauty of the Beast leans into her wild side, gives her this awesome half-shaved hairstyle, and covers her face in scars that grant her a tough, battle-hardened look. It seems like this version of Mileena has given up on her lofty goals and just wants to revel in bloodshed. Likewise, her outfit is less fancy than many of the others, incorporating lots of leather straps. There's a red and gray variation of this costume called Enemy of the Kaitin, which I'm unsurprisingly fond of. On top of being my favorite color, red seems fitting for such a violent version of Mileena. MK1 is a reboot of the series, and Mileena is the character whose lore changed the most. Instead of a clone, she's Kitana's birth sister, an older sister at that, so she's next in line for the throne. In the new universe, Tarkatans are no longer a species. Instead, Mileena has a disease called Tarkat that gives her big freaky monster teeth. That also means Mileena isn't evil anymore, though she is prone to the occasional bout of uncontrollable bloodlust. I wasn't a big fan of Kitana's MK1 costume, and I think that Mileena's is better, but still not great. It's a pretty straightforward bodysuit with plenty of detail, but no real points of interest. I would hope for something more eye-popping from the future Empress. Ooh, sorry Kenji, too soon? I do like what they did with her head though. Her shaved hair gives her just a bit of edge compared to her sister, as does the scar across her eyebrow. She has a new face model, but the general concept remains the same. The biggest change from MK11 is that she now has these weird predator jaw flaps. I disliked them at first because I felt like they overcomplicated things, but I've started to come around on them. By now, everyone who plays MK already knows about Mileena's big freaky monster teeth, so an additional layer of weirdness brings back some of the shock value that she used to have. I still think her MK11 face is best, but this one is up there. Her Union of Light costume has an aquatic theme. Her armor's reminiscent of seashells, there's a scale pattern on some of her clothing, and if you look closely, there are even some pearlescent scales on her skin. This calls to mind sirens or similar mythical creatures that use their beauty to lure in sailors and then drown and/or devour them. I think this is one instance where pink works better than magenta, both because it's a common color under the sea, and because the brighter tone is fitting for the Union of Light. Her Order of Darkness costume actually has some lore, because it featured in one of the invasions. This is a version of Mileena whom Shang Tsung decided to give a really big brain, which was a terrible idea because she immediately betrayed him and then cloned herself to make an army of Mileenas that she used to conquer the multiverse. I, for one, would welcome our new Mileena overlords. Much like Mileena herself, this armor is equal parts beautiful and intimidating. She has these wide, flaring shoulders reminiscent of flowers, specifically orchids, which are sometimes associated with death. They also tie into her animality, which is an orchid mantis. My only real critique is that I think this costume should be messier. Despite her intelligence, Order of Darkness Mileena is just as chaotic and bloodthirsty as the one we know, so it would have been nice if there were some cracks in her queenly veneer. Maybe she could have had a few strands of hair falling in front of her face, or some minor damage to her armor. The default magenta looks good, but I prefer the darker purple of her Twisted Sister palette. It seems more fitting for an evil queen. I also really like the Bloodthirsty palette simply because of how vibrant the colors are. Cannibal Killer, spelled with all K's of course, is Mileena's Halloween costume. She's wearing the bloody remnants of a prison uniform, complete with a straitjacket that she's managed to claw her way out of. She also has a pair of gothic thigh-high boots for some reason. Just because you've been incarcerated doesn't mean you can't be stylish. To complete the sinister look, she has dark makeup around her eyes, a bunch of additional scars, and a new hairstyle that's similar to her default but with a closer shave on the sides and a messier ponytail. I'm always going to prefer designs that are based on fantasy or history, but this is really well done. It's one of few holiday-themed costumes that seem totally in character. Also, free my girl. I'm sure she's guilty, but she deserves to eat a few people. As a treat. Her Shiva Ranatai costume is festival attire. I like the slight asymmetry and the way that her shoulders and headpiece flare out in the same way. In the comments of the recent Katana update, my friend Layla, whose channel you should go check out by the way, she's done some Soulcalibur animations that I'll link in the description, pointed out that Katana and Mileena's Shiva Ranatai attire is actually layered on top of their default outfits. It's like this is the full ensemble, but Mileena only wears the whole thing on special occasions. Unfortunately, that also means there's some overlap with the default. Her mask and arms, for instance, are basically unchanged. Her Earthrealm costume is based on modern, real-world fashion. There's lots of fun Mortal Kombat branding. One of my main criticisms of Katana's Earthrealm design was that her mask didn't fit the modern aesthetic, but Mileena avoids that issue. The pink part seems to be made of plastic or some similar material. I could see someone wearing this IRL. My only real complaint is that her lower half seems a bit plain in comparison to the top. Maze Hunter Mileena is a version of the character who serves Titan Havoc. I wasn't too hot on Katana's version of this design, but Mileena's is significantly better. It leans more into the chaotic theme, giving her a bigger mohawk, a spikier pauldron, and a few scars on her head and torso. Plus, this whole concept is just a better fit for Mileena than her sister. Her Empress costume is what she wears after inheriting the throne from Sindel. It's fancy, but not as outwardly flashy as Shiva Ranatai or Order of Darkness. It doesn't seem like she's flaunting her status. I really like the teeth design on her veil, especially since Mileena canonically comes clean about her Tarkat once she's Empress. It's like she's saying the big freaky monster teeth are nothing to be ashamed of. I think there was a missed opportunity to make the outfit look a bit more like Sindel's to indicate that she's now fulfilling her mom's role. For example, maybe she could have worn the same metal crown. Her Deception costume is an update to her default costume from Deception. There are a few changes that I like, such as the boots being taller and the pink being swapped out for magenta, but there are just as many changes that I dislike, such as the belt being absent and the colored sections being a lot thinner. As I mentioned in the Katana video, I love MK1's version of the classic suit. It stays faithful to the original while adding some much needed detail to help it stand out in a modern game. Lastly, we have this costume that I can't actually find a name for. I think it might be one that hasn't shown up in the shop yet. It pays clear homage to the classic look, but it has a long waistcloth that creates a more interesting silhouette and some beautiful metallic accents. My main gripe is that it's just a palette swap of katanas. The classic costumes get a pass for that, but since this is a new design, it feels kind of lazy that they didn't differentiate Mileena, Katana, and Tanya in any way other than color. Now that we've gone over every Mileena costume, let's get to the rankings. From worst to best, we have Flesh Pits, MK4, which would be a lot higher if she showed her face, Deception Ult, Shaolin Monks, MK3, MK9 Ult, Vampiress, Tournament, Conum, MK1, MK1 Deception, Original Recipe Deception, MK2, Earthrealm, Empress, Shiva Ranatai, MK9, Union of Light, Cannibal Killer, that unnamed costume from MK1, MKX, Order of Darkness, MK1 Classic, Clone Warrior, True Conum, MK11, and finally, Beauty of the Beast. It was a real toss-up between the top few spots. My opinion might change if you ask me tomorrow, but I ultimately decided to give it to Beauty of the Beast since it feels the most unique to Mileena. Now that this video's done, I can finally breathe a sigh of relief. So let me know what you think of Mileena's costumes, and until next time, I bid thee farewell.